Ethiopia has discouraged the discouragement itself. Strangers rose up against while those who know Ethiopia woke up in favor. Strangers marched against but those who know her campaigned in favor. Ethiopia is a country that unleashes its unknown power when provoked. This is what is happening, says His Excellency Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on his tweet. Welcome to Ethiopia Today Official. We will cover the following topics in this video. The terrorist TPLF is being defeated on all war fronts, but its partners, primarily the US, has a huge decision to make. One of its founding members of TPLF says that the TPLF is divisive and corrupt from birth to death. Sudan's Al-Burhan says army will exit politics after 2023 vote. The details are as follow. The terrorist TPLF is being defeated on all war fronts, but its partners, primarily the US, has a huge decision to make. The US has a crucial path to choose at this juncture. Even though the terrorist TPLF group is being dismantled by the national forces on battlefield, it has continued unleashing its carnage on unarmed civilians in the Amhara and Afar states. On the diplomatic front, the US intensified its pressure against Ethiopia, worsening the situation by emboldening the terrorist TPLF group. Although the Biden administration officials continue to give the usual talking points and lip service, its actions cannot be further clear, with its embassy in Addis Ababa leading the propaganda campaign, says the Ethiopian Herald journalist Haile Damika. Firstly, what was the major reason that forced the US to get into the Second World War? Many argue that the US should consider Ethiopia's military operation against the terrorist TPLF group as a just war, comparing it with the Pearl Harbor incident. The US entered the Second World War because its navy was attacked by the Japanese at Pearl Harbor. In fact, the terrorist TPLF's attack on the northern command of the Ethiopian Defense Forces stationed in Tigray prompted the Ethiopian government to launch a law enforcement operation against the group as the Pearl Harbor incident that brought America into the Second World War. The Japanese launched a surprise attack on the US naval base at Pearl Harbor. After 2 hours of bombing, 21 US ships were sunk or damaged, 188 US aircraft were destroyed, and 2,403 people were killed. All of this happened while the US and Japan were officially engaging in diplomatic negotiations for possible peace. The attack occurred on a beautiful Sunday morning while the troops were ambushed unexpectedly while they were having the usual routine similar to the way it happened on November 4, 2020 in Tigray. The surprise aerial attack on the US naval base at Pearl Harbor by the Japanese precipitated the entry of the United States into World War II. The strike climaxed a decade of worsening relations between the United States and Japan. The Japanese surprise attack on Pearl Harbor began just before 8 a.m. local time Sunday morning, December 7, 1941. Some 350 Japanese aircraft, having taken off from 6 aircraft carriers 230 miles north of Oahu, attacked the naval base in 2 waves for over an hour. Japanese forces wreaked havoc on U.S. naval vessels and U.S. aircraft on the island's airfield. 11 starts superscript, 1 ends superscript in all, 2,403 Americans, including 68 civilians, died in the attack. In comparison, Japan suffered relatively light casualties, losing only 29 aircraft and a few mini-submarines. The American people were shocked, bewildered, surprised, and angered by the attack. On December 8, President Roosevelt addressed a joint session of Congress in the Capitol, his words broadcast on radio to the nation. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. In his address, Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war against Japan, which it did that day. 3 days later, Japan's allies Germany and Italy declared war on the United States, and Congress reciprocated the same day. All previous domestic opposition to U.S. entry into the war ceased. The United States was now immersed in a war it would conduct simultaneously in Europe and the Pacific. The United States began involvement in the war by supplying the Allies with goods and arms. The main event that brought America into the war was the attack on Pearl Harbor. Now that America is directly or indirectly supporting the terrorist TPLF group, many see this Washington as playing a double standard. When is the US going to say the terrorist TPLF's heinous war crime on November 4, 2020 justifies Ethiopia's right to defend itself as the US did in World War II? Why is this a double standard? Is the US morally bankrupt to condone insurgency without accountability? In the early hours of November 4, 2020, the Tigray People's Liberation Front TPLF attacked the Ethiopian National Defense Forces base located in the Tigray region and attempted to rob the Northern Command of artillery and military equipment. The Northern Command has been stationed in the Tigray region for more than 2 decades in service and protection of the people of Tigray from any threats. The Ethiopian National Defense Forces was then ordered to carry out their mission to save the country and the region from spiraling into instability under the direction of a command post. Before the attack, the terrorist TPLF had been arming and organizing irregular militias outside of the constitutionally mandated structure. The attack on the Northern Command premised on TPLF viewing the Ethiopian National Defense Forces as a foreign army rather than an army that was protecting the people of Tigray for more than 20 years. Resultantly, TPLF has chosen to wage war. Currently, as the group intensified its attack on Amhara and Afar states, Ethiopians led by their commander-in-chief are destroying the terrorist group on all battlefields. In this regard, the US has a crucial path to choose before it is too late, says journalist Haile Damika. One is to continue helping TPLF in all manners possible and prolong the death and suffering of millions, potentially destabilizing the Horn of Africa. The other is to make policy correction immediately and respect the sovereign state of Ethiopia and its elected government. The choice is grave, and if the latter path is not taken, the United States will have a huge crisis that will be worse than Iraq, Afghanistan, and others, considering the human toll. The US needs to accept the fact that your acceptance and support have emboldened TPLF and gas-lighted the war. Likewise need to withdraw its support to the terrorist TPLF and order their immediate disarming and condemn the insurrections and stop equating them with a democratically elected government. Side with and help the Ethiopian government and people. On the other hand, the propaganda of international media is another challenge. The 24 hours media coverage of the situation in Ethiopia has been historical. As usual, they have been skewing events, confusion by omission and deliberate misrepresentations and falsehoods. The media is singing the US government's tunes in harmony. Unwarranted blocking of the Ethiopian Prime Minister's Facebook account, Twitter's censorship of messages favorable to Ethiopian interests are the tip of the iceberg of the assaults that we are witnessing, Haile explained. These entities have continued to glamorize the terrorist group's persona and embolden its existence. They are beating the drums, cheering its movement, while situations on the ground tell a different story. In conclusion, to the US administration, the Western world, the media, and aid organizations that have ulterior motives to help the terrorist TPLF, we say they need to reflect back on their actions and correct their mistakes before it is too late. Already too much blood has been shed, and history will judge every one of us if we don't change course and save lives and infrastructural destruction. One of its founding members of TPLF says that the TPLF is divisive and corrupt from birth to death. As Gide Zerazion told local media, the TPLF group has been employing divisive narratives to fuel ethnic and religious strife and to widen the political antagonism among the people of Ethiopia with a view to remaining in power since inception. Being the dominant party from the minority group, the TPLF has been taking the ethnic card as the instrument to remain in power, and it has been masterminding several interethnic conflicts and nurturing suspicion and hatred among the people, Gide said. Noting the overwhelming support TPLF garnered from the people of Tigray in its early years of struggle, the veteran politician indicated that this support has been waning time to time due to the faction's 27 years oppressive rule. TPLF is highly authoritarian and abhors multi-party system, and it is as corrupt as mafia gangs in robbing the country's immense wealth, Gide continued. He further stated that the faction once again has made an attempt to utilize the lives of Tigray's youth to quench its greed for power after being ousted by public resistance in 2018. After longer preparation, forces loyal to the radical element made a treasonous attack against the Northern Command, and the federal government's military response in this regard is justifiable and appropriate. As to Gide, TPLF has made an attempt to use the people of Tigray as cannon powder for its endless ambition for power, and its belligerence in Amhara and Afar states has caused loss of lives and enormous property damage. The group installed a pseudo-federalist system in pre-2018 Ethiopia and manipulated the public's perception in glorifying its military might, and presented itself as the defendant of ethnic rights that toppled the repressive Derg regime. Notwithstanding the existence of 9 states in the country, they were not fairly represented in the EPRDF coalition or in the state machinery. All the crucial decisions were made by 4 constituent members of the EPRDF coalition, and the remaining are left aside. Even the 3 constituent members of the EPRDF were created to support the TPLF, not challenge it. The ex-politician emphasized that now there is big change in Ethiopia's politics in accommodating different states in the executive body and also in the decision-making process. In the pre-2018 period, TPLF was the sole decision-making body under the uncontested leadership of Mullah Zenawi. TPLF also paralyzed the bureaucracy by appointing state officials by loyalty and devoid of professional merits and abilities, Gide remarked. This news was produced by Baitsagaye Talahun on December 4, 2021. The Ethiopian Herald. Sudan's Al-Burhan says army will exit politics after 2023 vote. Sudan's military chief says the army will leave politics after elections that are scheduled for 2023. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan offered the assurance during one of several interviews he gave to international news agencies on Saturday. The general had led a military takeover in late October, upending Sudan's transition to civilian-led democracy, but a deal struck on November 21 has reinstated Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok to lead a technocratic cabinet until elections in July 2023. When a government is elected, I don't think the army, the armed forces, or any of the security forces will participate in politics. This is what we agreed on, and this is the natural situation, Al-Burhan told the Reuters news agency. The coup, which ended a partnership with civilian political parties after the toppling of long-time ruler Omar al-Bashir, drew international condemnation after the detention of dozens of key officials and crackdowns on protesters. Neighborhood resistance committees and political parties have called for the military to exit politics immediately and have rejected any compromise, including the deal with Hamdok. According to medics, at least 44 people have died during demonstrations, many from gunshot wounds from security forces. Investigations regarding the victims of the protests have begun to identify who has done this and to punish the criminals, Al-Burhan said, adding that security forces had only dispersed non-peaceful protests. May God bless all who love truth. Thanks so much, our viewers. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Let's play with the algorithm so that the messages reach out to many viewers as much as possible. And by doing so, you are helping the channel achieves its contribution to the truth and its campaign in favor of the same. Many thanks.